Hello and welcome to this month's Downtown Aviation and Redevelopment Subcommittee. My name is Daniel Valenzuela, Phoenix City Council member for District 5, and I'm honored to chair this subcommittee. I'm joined by Councilman Bill Gates, District 3, and on the phone we have Councilwoman Kate Gallego, who represents District 8. The first order of business when it comes to this subcommittee, we begin and we end this meeting with a call to the public. Just a reminder that the public gets the first and the last word. We have some cards of people who'd like to speak when on some of these particular items, but no one at the beginning. Okay, excuse me. Councilman Gates is holding on to these ones.
That's
okay. We do have 3. So we'll start the meeting with call to the public, and the first is Bill Trumbo. We'll start the clock at 2 minutes.
All right. My name is Bill Trumbo. I'm a downtown neighbor. I'm retired. I'm not used to being up this early, but good morning. I'm also not getting much sleep lately. And I'm pretty angry because, as you well know, 2 months ago, airplanes started flying over my downtown neighborhood. And I've been bitching and complaining, and not a damn thing's being done about it. And I'm here today to ask one more time for my city council to do something about this. Last week, a lovely little colorful map was presented here that showed what has happened. We're all talking about how complicated this is. It's not complicated at all. You know, for the last 40 years or more, flights have gone out of Sky Harbor to the west 9 miles, and they turned up and went north. It's kind of like I-17. You know, nobody designed I-17 to run through the center of Phoenix. We went around the diagonal curve, right? But now suddenly, just out of the clear blue, well, we're going to turn and come right over to central Phoenix, and we're going to go right over the historic neighborhoods. Historic neighborhoods that on another map showed, it says right here, avoid heavy residential area. That's the way it's been for 40 to 50 years. And yet, there we go. What happens? Nothing. It's just like, oh, the FAA gets to do this. Well, I know this isn't, I mean, I live in a house that's registered with the National Trust. Okay, the rules say that you have to give us the opportunity to review this and do something about it. So I wrote to the FAA, and I got a very nice personal letter back from Glenn Martin of the FAA. He says, we did. We contacted local officials. We asked them for their permission to make this change and fly over downtown Phoenix and fly over the... They immediately gave it to them. No problem. So whose fault is that? Is it the FAA's, or is it somebody here who's just dropping the ball and saying this is okay? So I'm asking you to do something. You know, and I don't know what it is. I don't know how you're going to do it. But anybody that bought a home in downtown Phoenix in the last year, or any developer here who might be proposing a high-rise, I think they need to know that we're now underneath the flight path of one of the major airports in the United States. And I think it's time to do something about it. And I ask you to do your job. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't want to attempt the last name. First name Russ? What is it? Russ Cousins.
Pretty much in the same boat. I've lived in Fairview Estates for 26 years, and that's one of the historic districts now. When I moved there, it was basically a slum. There was bums on the street, and you had to fight your way in. I moved into a house that had no power, no electricity, no gas, no roof in the kitchen. And I moved in, reestablished it, and the neighborhood has come back. The neighborhood now is a very desirable place to live in downtown Phoenix. It's not going to be with this airport noise. No people. Sunday, the planes started. It only happens when the planes go west. And they don't go west all the time. They go west usually about 2:30 in the afternoon to midnight. And on Sunday, it was 12:45 in the morning. Well, I got no sleep. I mean, I'm a contractor. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So I slept from 12:45, 1 o'clock in the morning to 4. They go about every 20 seconds. up to 2 minutes. Okay, I got from Judy, your aviation department, I got a program for the weekend. And she said, and the aviation department in Phoenix swears these planes are not doing what we're saying, but they've never come out to look. Come out and take a look. When the planes are flying west, come out and see what the airplanes are doing. I've talked to Glenn Martin personally, twice on the phone. Glenn Martin said, where you're living, I'm 1.5 miles from Grand Avenue. He said you shouldn't have a problem with airport noise. I went out on my porch, put the cell phone up, and said, listen. And of course, it's louder than hell. And he said, oh, I guess you do have a problem. I'll call the tower and see what's going on. Never heard another word. That was 2 weeks ago. The airport noise, if continues to be the same, people are going to leave there in droves. They're not going to put up with that. You're going to have more rental properties. Now you don't have many rental properties. It's going the other way. People are coming in, buying up the rental properties, and fixing up the houses. Nobody's going to come into these areas and put hundreds of thousands of dollars, which I did in my house, in an airport zone. And if it continues, the valuations of the property, they're already stating, have gone down 30%. Who's going to do it? This needs to be addressed, and it's been not 2 months, 3 months. I went upstairs. I talked to the mayor's office this week, talked to the gentleman who's supposedly looking into this. He didn't even have Martin's phone number. I do. I'd be more than happy to give it to anybody that wants to call him. I've called him twice. I'm a resident. I'm not a city council member. I'm not anything to do with the city. I've called him, and I've had long conversations with him, 20, 30 minutes at a time. And it's something the city needs to do. Have conversations, not we're working on it. It means really work on it. Get it taken care of. Or you're not going to have revitalization in downtown Phoenix. If you've got, like on 16th Street and McDowell, when they renovated 20 years ago at the airport, what have you got over there? You got empty buildings and empty lots, or boarded up buildings. Now, I'm hoping it don't come to that, but I'm telling you something. If, in fact, nothing is done for this, and it goes on for months and months and months more, people are going to move out in droves. They're going to get out. They're not going to stay. And you'll have more abandoned buildings.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, again, I can't read the handwriting. I think it's Brad.
I can't read it either.
Okay, can you tell us your name, sir?
Almond, A-L-M-O-N-D.
Brad Almond.
First,
2
I'd like
minutes.
to ask some questions with regard to what knowledge the subcommittee members had of the new fly zones, and when they were apprised of that information, and whether the mayor and other members of city council were apprised, and when they were informed.
Now, there are certain rules that prevent the dialogue on public comment, but we do have our aviation staff here. We have council staff here, and I will ask them to have a conversation with you even after the public comment section.
So you're saying that, could you at least answer and say why it is that this information is being hidden?
Now, I won't answer the question directly because, again, there are certain rules.
All right.
But at the end of the public comment, each of my colleagues will certainly have an opportunity to share their thoughts
Okay.
on this.
That would be good. Obviously, the neighbors are extremely upset. Supposedly, the purpose of an environmental assessment is to allow people to have some input and to be apprised and feel like they're part of the process. From my studies indicate that the air transport industry, in conjunction with their FAA partners, are acting like a business, and they're only interested in their bottom line, and it appears that the citizens of America, in fact, the world, it's a global business, had no input because they are not air transport industry stakeholders. And so that there's the FAA sees two kinds of folks, basically stakeholders and activists. And that's, okay, assume, my research indicates that NextGen's probably justified, okay? That they say it's critical to the world, the nation, and our city to have NextGen capabilities and to expand the airport, and that that's the most cost-effective way to move forward. I don't disagree. On the other hand, that makes our airspace, our neighborhood airspace, a critical resource to the most cost-effective way to move forward. And the air transport industry effectively went in with its big stakeholders and said, well, these people are in our way and they're going to cost us money, and we don't want to have to pay any money, because that's what they do, okay? They have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize stockholder profits, okay, which doesn't mean doing anything compassionate, doing anything honestly fair, or in a moral way. So as a consequence, the laws have been fashioned in such a way that it's no mistake we weren't informed. That's what the law says, okay? They got a anyway, I don't believe that the citizens were represented properly in NextGen's formation, if at all. And we've essentially been asked to take one for the team. Okay, all of a sudden these airplanes come over, okay, and it's like going out, you know, in the military, you know, hey, if you get shot, you took one for the team. So we've been asked to take one for the team, but we weren't asked, we were forced to take one for the team. And I feel like the FAA and the air transport industry syndicate have acted and behaved like animals with regard to planning ahead and their treatment of the people, in not just in Phoenix, but it's, you know, it's happening all over the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Allman.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, because this particular item is not on the agenda, we risk violating the open meeting law by having a full discussion on it. So what I will say is I mentioned we have aviation staff that are here. We have staff members from each of the council districts and the mayor's office here. And I'm going to speak for our staff a little bit in saying that I'm sure everyone can let you know what each of the council offices have done. I will also tell you that I had a meeting with the city manager yesterday, and this is an item that will be an ongoing item that will be heard in this subcommittee, so that we can continue to discuss it and not violate the open meeting law. I think you will find that you are working with a number of advocates here, and we are all in the same boat, and we are here to support the community when it comes to this issue. So again, we do have staff members here. Please have a discussion with them, and I'll ask our staff members to go over and give you business cards so that we could get you caught up on what we're all doing as well. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the November 5th, 2014 minutes. Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item 4 is for consent. There's no presentation planned, but we do have someone here who can answer questions. Before I entertain a motion, we do have one card. Teresa Bryce on item 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the time. My name is Teresa Bryce. I'm with the Local Initiative Support Corporation Phoenix office. And I'm here today to talk about a concept that I'd like to be considered by the subcommittee and ultimately the City Council about providing some direction about using community benefits agreements as part of an RFP, especially for those private projects that the city anticipates would be seeking city assistance to bridge a financial gap and leverage private investment. Generally speaking, in these types of private development situations, what the developer is seeking most often is a G-Plat. And I know that this particular concept has had some questions about how it's to be provided in the different private context. What I'm here today to suggest is that the use of public dollars for private development is most often acceptable when there is a very clear connection to a specified community benefit. Now, community benefits can be negotiated at various points in time, but I'm suggesting that we include within the evaluation criteria a much more clear description of the types of community benefits that we would be seeking from developers. And what I'm suggesting is that this concept not be applied broadly across the board, but that we look in each situation where a project is coming forward and asking the city for this type of a financial investment, and to look at the context and to find out what would be the best type of community benefit that would result from this type of a project, and that this thinking be done beforehand and be included in the evaluation criteria. A community benefit is something that extends beyond the project itself to benefit the surrounding community. For example, landscape improvements, agreements to provide jobs to the surrounding community during the construction. For LISC's perspective, providing some type of affordable housing that might be included in part of the development. And we certainly don't want to burden private developers with additional regulatory. We would not be asking them to certify incomes, for example. But it's fairly easy for developers that are providing multifamily residential to, upon that initial application, to look at the incomes of the people that want to rent, and then to make a decision about whether or not they can reduce the rent slightly below market rate to accommodate people whose incomes, for example, would not qualify for government subsidized housing, but simply can't qualify for the market rate, somewhere in the income range between 80% and 100% of area median income. So I'm bringing this to you for your consideration. I realize we certainly don't want to slow down this process in making this available to go to council in their mid-December meeting, and I'd be willing to work with the community to indicate a support for the concept of community benefits agreement where public funds are used in private projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bryce.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman? Yep. Thank you. I think those were some excellent points and something that we need to look at, especially our next item here. We're actually going to have a GIPLET being discussed, so it's something that we need to look at each one of these projects very carefully. This concept of community benefit that you've raised is important, and clearly when you look around the development that's going on, not only in the city of Phoenix, but really around the valley, we don't have a lot of affordable housing coming out of the ground. It's more sort of Class A type of product that we're seeing, so I think you're raising a good point. As I look at the proposed numbers on here, there's 150 points for level of return and benefit to the city. And then there's also number 5, which is another 150 points for consistency with adopted plans and ordinances. So that's 30% of the total points. I personally feel like that addresses your concerns with the addition that, I'm going to be supportive of this today, but as we move forward to council, maybe we can all work, maybe staff could work with us, I would suggest, to make sure that in those 300 points that the concerns that you've raised are being considered. So, perhaps, I don't know if it's time for a motion, but maybe I would take that and kind of wrap that into a motion with that particular direction to staff.
Okay. So can we take that as a motion, or do we need to get that? I think we got it. All right. Okay. So we have a motion.
Second?
And we have a second. I agree with the comments made by my colleague. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Item 5, Barrister Development Agreement.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, staff is here today to discuss with you something that actually has been a priority of the City Council on two fronts for a period of time. The first being strategically finding opportunities where existing unutilized real estate assets can be monetized by exposing them to the marketplace. And second, pursuing high-quality redevelopment within the downtown. And staff is here today to discuss the Barrister Building and where we are at and what it is that we recommend in terms of pursuing development of the site. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Mr. Chairman, subcommittee members, we have with us today John Trujillo from the Public Works Department, who is the owner of the building, and also Michelle Dodds from the Planning and Development Department, who is the city's Historic Preservation Officer. The Barrister Building is a building that's on the Phoenix Historic Property Register, and we have heard loud and clear from the beginning of this project that historic preservation is of paramount importance in this process. So I'd also like to recognize we have several representatives from our developers that we're recommending here in attendance today. Chapin Bell and his team from PB Bell and Associates, as well as Mark Davis and Jennifer Lunt Davis from the Davis team. If we have any questions of them, they are standing by ready. So the city owns the historic Barrister Building, built in 1915. The city acquired it in about 1990, and then vacated the building in 2010 with consolidation of staff back into City Hall. The building is about 45,000 square feet, 6 stories, and the property surrounding it is totals about 1 acre. 65 parking spaces exist on the site, and the building is essentially in mothball status right now. We issued an RFP after receiving council approval of the issuance and of the evaluation criteria. The RFP went out earlier this year. We received 7 proposals, formed an evaluation panel that included, just like we always do, community members and staff members both to evaluate the proposals. And they actually interviewed the top recommended proposers and made a recommendation middle of this year for PB Bell and Davis, the team who is here today. In September through November, essentially we were in negotiations with the development team and doing a little more stakeholder outreach to get us to the point where we're here today. I mentioned the evaluation panel. It included 3 community members and 4 city staff with representation across the spectrum, including neighborhood groups and stakeholders that have expertise in the areas that we needed, including historic preservation. We also consulted closely with public transit, because the light rail south extension, if it and when it happens, will go immediately adjacent to this building.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilwoman Gallego?
I had requested that a separate representative of sustainability be included on the panel. Was that something you accomplished?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Councilwoman
Can you
Gallego.
repeat the question?
Oh, sure.
So
I
for the
believe the
benefit-
question was that Councilwoman Gallego had requested a sustainability representative on the panel. So I'm happy to answer that. And we actually have someone here from Planning and Development who was part of the evaluation panel. We consulted with Planning and Development and got someone to work closely with this representative who is a LEED certified, to make sure not only sustainability from a broad perspective, but sustainability from the scoring and the LEED criteria were addressed very specifically.
Okay.
So it was a planning and development staffer who was the sustainability representative?
Yes, that's correct. Okay.
Is that, are we able to move on?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so the developer team that's here today is PB Bell, founded in the 1970s and operates exclusively in Arizona, primarily in Metro Phoenix. They have acquired about 5,000 units since 1990, including a pretty big acquisition earlier this summer. And according to a recent Wall Street Journal article, they're at about 10,000 units overall. A local family-owned business in operation with its 3rd generation. Davis Enterprises, very similarly, while PB Bell is focusing on the residential component, Davis is focusing on the commercial or retail and restaurant component of the proposal. Davis Enterprises is led by Mark Davis and Jennifer Lunt Davis here today, and they focus in commercial renovation and redevelopment in inner city redevelopment areas. Specifically, the couple projects that we're showing here on the screen are 7th Avenue and McDowell, near where the Payway is, and at 7th Avenue and Indian School, near the Melrose District. The proposal is for a mixed-use, transit-oriented residential project. Really the focus is preserve and rehabilitate the Barrister Building and construct 2 new buildings, one on either side of it, that are just a little bit shorter, about the same height as the Barrister Building. When this project would open, it would have 114 apartments on the upper levels, parking garage behind the front levels, fronting the streets, and right at the corner, retail space and restaurant space, and what they're calling a flex space that could either be used for retail or for parking, depending on demand. The total project value is approximately $27 million, and the apartments range from 1 bedroom, 1 bath, up to 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 114 units all in. The entrance to the parking garage, which is really important from a circulation standpoint, is off Madison on the south edge of the property. These are, once again, very conceptual images at the very beginning of the process before real design has really got underway, but the focus is really on preservation of the building and construction of 2 new buildings that don't try to mimic or imitate the historic building, which I think is something that historic preservation, the team and the commission were looking for. And something that responds to the city codes and ordinances like the bicycle infrastructure. And throughout this proposal, these were mentioned: bicycle infrastructure, shade, streetscape, pedestrian amenities, actually having a pedestrian paseo, a pedestrian corridor that goes through some of the project's interior spaces. And just focused in general on adherence and with not only the letter of the form-based code, but also the spirit of it. So under development terms, the developer will purchase the property for $2.28 million, and this is a little bit different than what was in the what is in the City Council report, because we actually had an opportunity to negotiate further after the report was published. So it's very important to the city to generate revenue this fiscal year due to our budget situation, and our development team, I'm happy to report, heard that loud and clear. And we were able to negotiate not for a little bit up front and a lot later, but for all of the revenue from this purchase to happen in this fiscal year. So within 6 months of council action, they would pay the $2.28 million. Yes, Councilman.
And just a question, Mr. Chair, was this amount actually figured into the budget already? Do we know?
Mr. Chair, Councilman Gates, I believe about $1.3 million was accounted for in the current city budget.
Of the 2.28?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
All right, great. So in addition to that, historic preservation is obviously at the forefront of the project, and not only are they proposing to rehabilitate the building, but also grant the city a conservation easement on the building for the term of the agreement. So that really assures that that historic preservation staff has an ability to review the project and make sure that everything that happens is consistent with the guidelines of the office.
Another question. So we have an appraisal on the property?
Yes, yes, we do. Yeah, the appraisal came in at $1.95 million. And so this price is 15 or 20% above that appraised value. Yep.
Thank you.
So the developer, under the business terms, will finance and construct the project themselves. We included a term in the business terms that the project can't disrupt the future light rail alignment that will happen in Central Avenue. We heard you loud and clear when we discussed this at the subcommittee before. And from a timeline standpoint, we are requiring execution of a development agreement within 6 months of council action, starting construction within 2 years of that, and completing construction within 30 months after the start. One of the items that's not mentioned in here that was extremely important to Public Works is that this building at the current time, that we spend quite a bit of money on its operation, just in a mothball status to pay the electric bill and basics. So the sooner we can get this off of the city's expense and into private development, the better. And that was another condition that we were very successful in negotiating. And thanks so much to the development team for hearing us on that, because within 6 months, not only will we get the purchase price that's above the appraised value, but we also have the developer take on the responsibility and the cost for the maintenance, which is a giant cost savings over the duration. The development terms also include a government property lease excise tax, a 25-year agreement, including 8 years of property tax abatement, and the developer would make annual lease payments to the city ranging from $5,000 to $175,000 a year. And then typically we include other standard terms and conditions in those agreements. So the benefits of the project: this is consistent with the downtown strategic plan in several ways, including historic preservation and activation of vacant buildings and vacant property that's just used as parking right now. It's transit-oriented development directly on the light rail line on 2 edges. It would bring more downtown residents to the area to spend money in the local bars and restaurants and retail shops, and it would leverage significant private capital investment to the tune of $27 million. Construction jobs, approximately 250, 29 permanent jobs, and that's a little bit of a higher number because of the restaurant and retail component. And then there are implications for construction sales tax, city tax revenues on the order of $3.4 million over the 25-year term, and about $5 million in operating cost savings. When you take that annual figure that we spend right now and include a small escalation over 25 years, that adds up very quickly to $5 million.
Mr. Chair and Councilman Gates, I just want to insert one comment. Because this property is jointly owned by the general fund, the transit fund, and the solid waste fund, we're confident that the funds I described for the general fund will absolutely occur. There will be a division, if you will, amongst the family members, so to speak, of the ultimate price that the developer pays. I just didn't want that to be a surprise as we proceed forward.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Blue saw me spending the $900,000. That's why he we're hiring a bunch of police officers, I think, in my head.
I have some cards, so we'll get to the cards before we'll comment. Now, several cards who are in support but do not wish to speak: Mark Davis, Jennifer Lunt, Michael Truman, R. Chapin Bell. I tell you, man, I don't feel bad about my handwriting. Not at all. Angela Hood, Jeff Thompson, Grady Gamage. You like the way I say that, Grady?
Yeah.
Grady Gamage. And one card who is signed a speaking card, Billy Shields. Is Mr. Shields still here? Okay. Mr. Shields marked in favor. Okay, I'll open it up to my colleagues.
Do we expect that the building was able to operate without any, or will not require any variances for the downtown code?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Sure. So, Mr. Chairman, subcommittee members, I believe the question was whether we expect the development to require any variances from the downtown code.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, great. And I think the answer would be really they have very conceptual design at this point, and until they get a little further down the road in design, we wouldn't know that answer.
Mr. Chair, Councilman Gallego, however, I believe both what came through the RFP as well as in the terms that staff has negotiated is an absolute commitment by the developer to do everything they can to comply with all of the historic preservation ordinances, our bike master plan, shade and tree master plan, pedestrian-oriented development. So I I believe, all intent, and the words that Scott gave you that both verbally and that I think will be in, if the council were to advance this forward to the subcommittee, the full council would have the words surrounding the the specific intent to comply with the ordinances. We really, I think, have heard nothing more than a strong desire by the developer to do everything they can to comply with the ordinances as written. Recognizing sometimes there are physical facts that impair a site because of the specific condition that they have not yet designed and they may confront.
And can you speak specifically to parking garage frontage along Central and Jefferson and what we'll expect to see there?
Sorry, parking garage.
Councilman Mr. Chair, Councilman Gallego, I think what I heard you say was speak specifically to garage development and what it is that we will see on the street faces related to that garage development. Is that accurate?
Yes, specifically along Central and Jefferson.
Okay, so in a nutshell, along Jefferson, Barrister Building, of course, will stay as it is. No changes to that. There are two new buildings that would be constructed. The one that would be on the Jefferson edge. What the developers proposed is what they're calling flex space that could either be used as retail space for instance, a food truck operation that would open up onto the street and be able to be activated, or could be used for parking. And that would probably vary depending on demand and could actually be flipped, not on a year-by-year basis, but much more frequent than that. So that's, I think, the beauty and the intent of the flex space. On the Central Avenue edge, which would also be the case on the Jefferson edge when it was a parking operation, you can't just, under the Urban Form Code, you can't just have a parking area that's visible to the pedestrian walking by. You have to screen the area, and that doesn't mean a simple oleander hedge. That means you actually have to have the building appear to be something that is retail space or shadow box windows for display. You essentially, the edge is very appealing from a pedestrian standpoint. And in addition to that, in addition to the building, there's also the streetscape and the preliminary images even that are shown at this level demonstrate a commitment to a shade canopy, a steel shade canopy, street trees, vines, and landscape that really enhance that pedestrian experience. There will be shade on the north side of the building on Jefferson just by the fact that there's tall buildings that are going to be there. And despite that, they still have pretty extensive shade and landscape amenities on that edge, as well as the Central Avenue edge.
And can you explain the flex space a little bit more and the temporary walls?
I could, or I could actually ask our development team to talk in a little more detail. Great.
I can, either way. Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Gates, my name is Grady Gamage Jr. I'm an attorney for the development team of the Bell Companies and Davis Enterprises. I think Councilmember Gallego's question was about the flex space on Jefferson. Is that correct? Did I hear it right?
You did.
Okay, we're actually not doing that. That's going to be retail space. The idea there was that if there wasn't sufficient retail demand on the Jefferson facade, we would, on a temporary basis, use that as a parking space within the building and still look like part of the building. And that as retail demand developed, it would move into retail. What we're finding, and Mike can stop me if he doesn't like my answer here, what we're finding is there is enough retail demand that we don't intend to use it as flex space. We're going to go straight to retail on the Jefferson frontage.
Okay. Councilwoman Gallego, do you have other questions?
Could you ask, since Mr. Gamage is there, could you ask him my question? We've had some concerns with downtown residents that we approved GIPLET and then developers come back and need a lot of variances, and that we've sort of given the approval too early in the process.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Gallego, Scott did a good answer to this question. We don't know about variances at this point. We don't think we will need any. But I was somewhat involved in the downtown law school project, which didn't really want to have variances either, but was very surprised by some of the impact of the downtown code. Personally, I think you've got some problems in the downtown code. I will just tell you that, that are causing variances that people shouldn't be applying for. Variances are disfavored by Arizona law, and the last thing you want to do is set up an approval process that requires a lot of variances. We don't expect to need any, but I can't tell you that we for sure won't need some, because the downtown code is new enough and has significant issues within it that there may be some.
Mr. Chairman, subcommittee members, if I could just add to that, what's not in any of the reports or even in their proposal is the fact that this is a local development team that lives by and large downtown and has a vested interest in good design and knows these guidelines and documents that we're talking about and the intent and the spirit of them, and is fully committed as demonstrated in their proposal, and just by the virtue of if they didn't, people would be knocking on their door all the time. So I think we're very, very confident and comfortable with this development team to follow very closely the spirit of all of these codes and ordinances.
Glad to answer any other questions.
Councilwoman
maybe.
Gallego, do you have any other questions before I move over to Councilman Gates?
Nope.
Okay, Councilman Gates? Thank you, Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So how many residential units will there be, are you anticipating, in the Barrister building itself?
So 114 units overall, and the breakdown, just give me one moment here. 35 apartments based on the proposal, and once again, conceptual design might change just a little bit. 35 apartments in the Barrister building itself.
Could you bring up the slide before that had the financial benefits to the city?
Oh, the other way?
Yeah, it was the one right before the last one we were on. So it's broken down, the next one.
This one?
No, one more. There you go, that one. Thank you. That's where I can get my calculator out here. So what's the lost, if the council approves the GIPLET, what's the lost property tax over the 25 years?
Well, happy to
Or
report.
deferred, maybe it would be a more appropriate term.
Currently, it is a city-owned property that generates zero property tax. So this is unlike some of the recent agreements that we've considered that are on private ownership right now.
Right.
So the loss would be zero. In
Yeah,
that
I need
case.
to. Yeah, I need to ask that a different way then. So, if we had I'm asking you to kind of calculate this on the fly. But so, what's the purchase price of this? Is 2.8 million, something like that.
2.28. Yes.
2.28. So, if it was 2.28, if it's on the rolls at 2.28, what would be rough numbers? What would be the lost property tax over that period? And that's okay if you don't. I mean, if that's a little unfair. Ballpark.
Mr. Chair, Councilman Gates, because the property tax is so unique to specific buildings, we haven't gone and comped the building. But what I would say is the state legislature has set up a substitute for the property tax, which is the government lease excise tax. And so that is going to be distributed to all the jurisdictions. The revenue is both collected by the county treasurer and distributed to all of the taxing jurisdictions that broadly receive the property tax. They are not perfectly the same, but it's the legislature's attempt at a substitute, and then they escalate across time. So for the 8 years, we probably would have to come back to you and say kind of what our guess is, but it's really hard in the abstract because oftentimes new development actually flattens the tax rate for everybody, so it's less about the production of revenue and well, you know the issue
Yep.
very clearly.
Yep. Okay, so that's fair. I'm kind of asking you right on the fly here. So if we could have that discussion between this point, assuming that it passes today, and the council, full council, that would be That would be great. And then on some of the other recent GIPLETs that have been done in downtown, there's work that's been done with local school districts. Has that been done in this? I don't think that was in the presentation.
Yes, absolutely. We have worked very closely with the school district throughout this process, including a meeting yesterday afternoon. And the sentiment of the school district, especially as it relates to property that starts as city-owned, is there's not really a downside because right now it generates zero property tax for their base. So this would actually bring something that is not on the tax rolls onto the tax rolls, albeit in 25 years. But in between, they would get, as Paul mentioned, the excise tax, which is a substitute.
But if this were a private building that was going to receive the GIPLET treatment, there would be something additionally, some additional, makeup that would be done with the local school district, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and again, that's something that I'd be interested in seeing if we can look at that. Because to me, it's not really fair to say, well, this would just sit there and be government property, so there'd be no property tax revenue generated. No, the other option is it'd be sold to somebody who'd be willing to do this, be willing to do something on this property without the GIPLET. Now, it may not have the sensitivity to historical preservation, but there'd be something. And so for me, that's really the linchpin on this particular project, is the historic preservation, the easement that's established. Also, I guess one, historic preservation easement, and then this sort of a transit easement as well. To me, that's really the focus here that makes the GIPLET make sense. But having said all that, I'd be interested in those calculations and if there would still be anything that could be done as it relates to the school district. Again, between now and going up to the full council.
Can I ask a related question?
Of course.
Did any of the applicants have a proposal that did not ask for a GIPLET?
So I believe the question was, did any of the proposers not request a GPLAT? And I believe the answer is yes. One or two of them did not request a GPLAT as part of their proposal. But in the evaluation criteria, the city financial assistance requested, like the GPLAT, was one of the criteria that was given significant weight, but there were other criteria that were looked at as well, including developer qualifications and kind of a proven track record and other return to the city. So there were several factors that were included.
Excellent, because I share Councilman Gates' interest in finding more funds for police officers, and then in my case,
Sure.
finding more funds for infrastructure such as streets and flood control. So I think we want to make sure that GIPLET is a tool we use sparingly.
Okay. So when we first started talking about this, and we brought up the Barrister building, when my biggest concern my biggest concern had to do with, moving the Barrister building off our books, only to purchase it back because light rail may be coming. We know that light rail will be going south, and we've seen that happen in municipal government before, where you get rid of a certain property, but we are just not having the foresight of just realizing that now we're going to have to buy it back for 10 times as much. So I really appreciate the work that has been done to assure that none of the light rail would be disrupted. Those easements and everything else have been worked out in this arrangement. So I really do appreciate that. It's not just light rail, but it is the historic preservation. I think you've thought of a lot of. You certainly were listening, and you're obviously incredibly talented yourselves, and you're thinking outside the box. I'm talking to our city staff and, of course, all of our partners. So the project will generate $2.28 million in new city revenue from the developer's purchase. Obviously, it's above the appraised value. You mentioned that this is coming off of our books, which I think is also an important point, because right now we are paying to have this in mothball status, as you refer to it, and you're right. So I think I think overall this is, I think, where we need to be. This is a very smart way of doing it, and the overall objective is to bring more residents to downtown Phoenix, which I think is important for all of us. I've heard Councilwoman Gallego mention it many times as well. We would like to see more residential housing here. I'd love to see a grocery store here. I'd love to see, just more families here in downtown, and I think this helps us move in that direction. And again, it doesn't limit our potential for infrastructure or light rail or anything else. And so I really do think this is where we need to be. I think we can certainly, now this is for, it's an action item, so we can certainly entertain a motion and going to Councilman Gates, looking for more information leading up to the council meeting. I think we can certainly do that. So I'll entertain a motion.
I would move approval of the item with the various items that I've asked for between now and the full council meeting. So again, I'm making the motion to move it forward, but I do have some issues and concerns that I've raised, and I assume that those will be sufficiently addressed so that I can be supportive at the full council. And having made that motion, I mean, I was this weekend at the city skate with my family and the tree lighting. I mean, so this is really at the center of what's going on in downtown. So that is yet another reason that I think it is appropriate for us to be looking at this and to get this off the books and to just add more vibrancy to downtown. And I assume that all the renters will be provided with free skates that they can, use during the holidays. So with that, I move for approval.
Okay.
Councilman Gates?
Yes.
In the past, when we have projects where we don't have a lot of detail on the design, we've made the approval contingent on review by the Downtown Design Review Board. And I think in this area, I would particularly like to emphasize for the frontage along Central and Jefferson. So is that something you would be willing to include in your motion?
Yeah, absolutely. I would accept that friendly amendment.
Excellent. Then I'd like to second the motion.
Okay. Great. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 6. Thank you, Mr. Gemmett.
Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, we're here today to talk about what we think is an exciting opportunity to advance an assemblage in the west side of downtown that goes straight to the heart of the issue you raised and this subcommittee has raised in the past, which is continue developing consequential amounts of new multifamily or residential development within the downtown. Staff has been working for some time on West Fillmore to pursue just this sort of a notion, and we're here today to talk about a strategic opportunity to partner with the county and the Phoenix Industrial Development Authority to advance that. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Chris Mackey and Scott Sumners to share staff's presentation with you.
Good morning, Chairman and Council members. We're actually here today to talk to you about creating a new neighborhood here in downtown and strategically working with the partners that Mr. Blue identified to assemble the property, bring it under city control, and get it out for private development. We'd like to talk to you today about a 2-step process, and that process would be first today to get this committee's recommendation to move forward with our partners to assemble the land under city control. In a few months, we'd then come back to you with a master plan design and strategy to take it out with community input for private development. So with that in details, I'd like to turn it over to Scott Sumners.
Great, thank you, Ms. Mackey. The site that we're talking about is just immediately northwest of City Hall, right in the heart of downtown Phoenix. It is on the north side, bordered by Fillmore and located between 4th and 6th Avenue. And we've been working in collaboration with the county and with the Phoenix Industrial Development Authority over the past 3 or 4 months on a strategy to bring this forward and the potential for private sector development on the site. So in this map, the city owns what's shown in on the left side as the 3.5 acre parcel, and the top as the 1.1 acre in yellow. And the county currently owns the 2.8 acres on the right side there. And so all in, that is a 7.4 acre piece of property. And that's a very significant opportunity for, as Ms. Mackey said, something on a neighborhood scale, something that could have 800 to 900 apartments, condos, townhomes, a lot more residents, approaching 1,000 new residents downtown. So that's a fantastic opportunity. So we've been working on a strategy to combine ownership all under one entity, because whatever we put out to the private sector, we need to make sure that this is attractive. And I think if we were to have ownership in 2 separate camps with a city process and a county process and 2 separate timeframes and procurement rules, that would be very complicated, and I'm not sure we'd get quite as good of responses from the private sector, nor would the product that's developed at the end of the day be quite as good. So we are proceeding on a strategy to bring it all under one ownership. So the green parcel that we showed just a few minutes ago, the 2.8 acre parcel that's owned by the county, the city currently has an option under an intergov agreement to buy that property. The price that was set back in 2009 is approaching $4.9 million, or $40 a square foot. The county actually did a new appraisal, a fresh appraisal based on current market conditions, and that price came back significantly lower. And we believe all in, including an option fee and closing costs and all that, we'd be able to pick up that property of the entire property for $3.2 million. So the part of the request that we're talking about here today is to authorize an amendment to that intergov agreement to essentially set the new price or reflect the new appraised price. At the same time, we've been working with the Phoenix Industrial Development Authority, and I'm happy to recognize John Salgado here from that group in the audience if we have any questions of them today, who is essentially our equity partner, very helpful equity partner in this endeavor that would be participating in the funding for this project to the tune of up to 90%, with the condition that the returns on this investment would come back to the IDA in an equivalent portion. So that's the second part of the motion here today that we're requesting, and that's a new development agreement with the Phoenix IDA. So there's several advantages of single ownership. I mentioned before that this is much more attractive to private sector developers. It'll also let us be able to respond to the very strong market conditions downtown for residential right now and bring this to the market sooner. Generate probably more revenues if it's all in one piece, because there's an economy of scale. And at the end of the day, when this is fully developed, if it's an integrated project and the entire property is looked at as one piece, the result will inevitably be much better. There's a lot of opportunities with this site, namely focused on the strong residential demand. This is consistent. This action would be consistent with the downtown strategic plan and several goals that we've mentioned and the council's adopted as part of that process to eliminate vacant lots. This site has been dirt essentially for a long time, and this would put that property to great use. Also mentioned that we have a master planning study that was spearheaded by the Downtown Phoenix Partnership through a grant through LISC that we've been working in collaboration with LISC, the county, the IDA, and the city over the past 3 or 4 months to see what's possible on this site. And I think that's what Ms. Mackey mentioned earlier. We are close to being able to talk about that. And we plan to come back to this subcommittee sometime in early 2015, so in a month or two, and present what might be possible out there in terms of number of units and retail and restaurants and parking and streets and great streetscape. So from a cost standpoint, we are looking at a total acquisition cost not to exceed $3.2 million all in. The Phoenix IDA would pick up to $2.7 million of that, and the city would pick up to $500,000 of that cost. And the funding source for this is the Downtown Community Reinvestment Fund, which was established for this purpose, to be able to invest in projects like this that have strong returns down the road. Other key terms, the city needs to take ownership and will maintain the property throughout the term of the agreement. The city would lead the procurement process to seek private development, and the IDA would participate in that process. The city would incur some maintenance expenses in making sure the property doesn't have weeds and has fencing and is safe. And the city would recover those expenses prior to any revenues being distributed. And then I think I mentioned before, the IDA would get the portion of net revenues from the disposition and development of the site when that happens. That's consistent with the IDA's investment up front. And so that's all I have. Our recommendation is recommend City Council authorization to amend the agreement with the Maricopa County to set the new price and to enter into a new development with the Phoenix IDA to facilitate this acquisition.
Okay, we have one card in favor. Daniel Locke, DPI.
I've got that hand ready too. Dan Clockey with the Downtown Phoenix Community Development
I
Corporation.
can't win today.
That's
I
okay.
apologize.
No,
Mr.
I'm son of a doctor, so I understand.
All right.
Dan Clockey with the Downtown Phoenix Partnership. I also run a little community development corporation, which is part of the umbrella of the partnership in DPI. Been working closely with Scott and Chris and Paul over the last 6 months on this project. Just give some quick background as well. We were approached by city staff and county staff to take a look at this 7.5 acre parcel. If you're not familiar with it, envision sitting out at the Vig or Chibo and staring south and looking at all that vacant land. It's a tremendous opportunity to really bolster what's been going on in the Roosevelt community over the last 10 or 15 years. Specifically, I do want to acknowledge Teresa Bryce and LISC. It was through private money that came to bear to help look at the conceptual planning for publicly owned property, which I think is a great use of resources to try to leverage what's been going on here with the city and the county. So this process, and as Scott talked about, I really hope we can come and present to you a little bit more in depth about what we've been doing. But it has been a process where we could bring in professional expertise for planning and for economic analysis to really look at this is what the zoning is, this is what the community wants, this is what the yields can be, and how do we marry that together so that when an RFP goes out, the development community says, yes, this makes sense. The neighborhood says, yes, this makes sense. And so members of this committee that has been part of this process has included, obviously, the property owners, have included stakeholders and property owners in the Roosevelt and general community. So they're all part of this process, and we fully intend to go out to the broader community as well before an RFP was ever released to make sure that folks are comfortable with it. But what I think is really important is we've actually gone out to the development community and said, take a look at these concepts. Take a look at the numbers behind them. Does this make sense to you? Can you get this done? And the response has been extremely positive. And we're doing that because, again, we want to make sure that when the process goes forward, there's predictability. To the point of this presentation, developers rely on predictability. Risk is all about, mitigating risk is what development is about. And so when you have two property owners that have different sets of rules of how they dispose of property, it makes it unpredictable and your property values aren't worth as much and your development project won't be as good. By combining this under one entity, and quite honestly an entity which is much more accustomed to delivering RFPs to the development community and doing community development, you stand the chance of having a much better development in the long run. So I would ask that you would support this motion and move this property along, and I really look forward to talking to you more about the project.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay, so that's the only card we have. I'll open it up to my colleagues.
Mr. Chair, very pleased to see IDA's involvement in this. It makes a lot of sense to me. Just a question from the IDA perspective, do they anticipate making money off of this project? But a return, no less.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Gates, I think what is the absolute intention, the IDA has been a wonderful partner in helping us get in a position where we could bring land to bear, where we didn't necessarily have the resources or the confidence to do that. So they have patient capital number one. And then number two is we have made a commitment that when we do this, our intent is to return the capital to the IDA. But certainly if returns exceed the value that they have put in, it is obviously a fair business practice to return to them a share of them. But our goal has been to not use them as a grant, but merely as a bridge to achieve development so that the community wins, the capital is returned, and hopefully if there's good opportunities in the future, we could recycle that capital and maybe pursue other opportunities with the IDA at some point in the future.
And then just one follow-up question. For the land that's currently owned by the city, then the proceeds we receive from the eventual sale, that'll go back into the downtown fund, or where will that go?
Sure, Councilman, the original acquisition was through land exchange with the county when the county constructed the court tower. So we would need to look back at the source of funds for that. I know a portion of it was the Beeline development agreement that we also have with the IDA, and that was community reinvestment funds. So that's a portion of it. The rest we need to research and confirm unless.
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Gates, I think notwithstanding whether it was streets dollars, but essentially we sold right of way or traded right of way for land. And so I think it would be in the purview of the city council. What our typical actions would be to insert this into the Downtown Community Reinvestment Fund, but clearly wherever the council felt was the appropriate policy location for the net proceeds beyond what has been invested from the Community Reinvestment Fund is totally within the council's purview.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments by my colleagues? Councilwoman Gallego? Councilwoman Williams, do you have any?
I'm just happy to see something on the west side of Central for a change, because I think it is underutilized and it has great potential. So I think it's a great project to go forward. If no one has any questions, I would move approval.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. I too am pleased that the IDA is involved. I think they've been a tremendous partner, just a great partner for the city of Phoenix on several other projects. This is really exciting when you think about it. This is this is where the Pappas School was, and it's been vacant since 2008, and it's the largest parcel since, I believe, the Arizona Center that is available. And when you look at, and many of us have had lunch at the VIG or Chibo, lunch or dinner, and I think everyone is just waiting and wondering what creativity is going to take place on this, 7.5 acre parcel. And so it's really, it's very exciting. And, I guess it wasn't quite mentioned directly, but the beauty of this project and the creativity, I think now it's almost down to a science where everyone gets involved, including the neighborhood leaders, including the business owners, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing this grow. So we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Councilwoman?
Just wanted to quickly throw in that I hope it will include a grocery store, because we hear about that regularly at town resident meetings.
Nicely done. That would be really nice. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you so much. Okay. Item 7 is for information.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, John Chan and Eric Johnson are here today, who are key staff working on all the wonderful things that are coming forward with the Super Bowl and the impacts that has in downtown. And we have committed that we would come to the subcommittee and give you updates with you and some of your colleagues. We have given more frequent updates by the by as issues have arisen or as comments have been made. But we wanted to share with you where we're at, how we're communicating with the community, a little bit of a revisit of what's to come, and some of the next steps. We would plan actually to be before you again in January, as well as before the full city council in January, before all the festivities begin. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Paul, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. We're getting down to the wire. You know, approximately 2 years of planning is coming together, and we'll be kicking off this morning. The Super Bowl host committee unveiled a Super Bowl countdown clock. Thank you for being there, Councilman. We're about 60 days out from the big game, and we're going to give you a little bit of background information on some of our planning efforts. But before I do that, I want to take a minute and just acknowledge some people in the audience who have been really instrumental in working closely with the city team on the planning of the Super Bowl. So Daphne Price from the Super Bowl host committee is with us. And I also want to acknowledge Dave Kreider, Dave Roderick, and Terry Medexa from the Downtown Phoenix Inc., who have been very instrumental and also in working with us. So as we all know, not only will Arizona host the Super Bowl, but we're also hosting the Pro Bowl at the stadium as well. And although both of those games will be played at the University of Phoenix Stadium, downtown Phoenix will truly be the epicenter of all Super Bowl related events. So just to run through some of the events, the NFL Experience will be housed at the Phoenix Convention Center. This is the world's largest interactive football theme park. Very interactive games and exhibits for all fans. We'll also be hosting the NFL Shop, which is a 30,000 square foot retail store where football fans this is where you want to get your official Super Bowl merchandise, right here in downtown Phoenix. So that will be open to the public. You don't need a ticket to the NFL Experience to come into the NFL Shop. So we encourage people to shop Phoenix for Super Bowl gear. In addition to that, the West Building of the Convention Center will be the official NFL Super Bowl Media Center. So more than 5,000 media members from the nation and around the world will be housed in the media center and broadcasting and reporting. Radio Row will have more than 100 radio stations broadcasting live out of the media center. The Hyatt Regency will be the official headquarters hotel for the Super Bowl and all of their staff. One thing that's new, a little different this year, is Media Day is something that is typically held at the stadium on the Tuesday before the game. This year, the NFL has announced that Media Day will be held here in downtown Phoenix at the soon-to-be Talking Stick Resort Arena. But the Media Day will be open to the public. It'll be a ticketed event, so fans can come and observe all of the press conferences with the AFC champions and the NFC champions and the coaches and teams for that. There will be a media breakfast that goes along with that. NFL House is a hospitality zone that's going to occupy some of the entertainment venues at Cityscape. We're also hosting the Friday night party at the Convention Center. And then the NFL Honors, which is the NFL's annual nationally televised awards show, will be broadcast out of Symphony Hall to about 3.5 million households on the eve of the Super Bowl. Some other events in the downtown that we'll talk a little bit more about. Obviously, Super Bowl Central will be one of the signature pieces of our downtown events. Super Bowl Central will be a 12-block outdoor fan campus, and there's some elements that have already been installed as part of Super Bowl Central to kind of generate some interest and awareness with the public. A large supersized football was unveiled a couple of weeks ago on Washington Street, and then the countdown clock this morning. The True Downtown Phoenix Festival is an event that the Downtown Phoenix Inc. Organization is working together. It will be anchored in the downtown as well as Roosevelt Row, so will provide some connection to the surrounding communities with 2 stages. It'll be focused on live music and entertainment and food. That will be going on for 2 days. The Pro Football Hall of Fame Gridiron Glory, that's an exhibit that's going to be open along with NFL Experience. This will be at the Arizona Science Center, so this will be an opportunity for football fans to see some of the history of the National Football League, going back to the days of leather helmets. The Bud Light Hotel and the House of Whatever will be occurring at Cityscape and the Barrister lot that's across the street on the other side of Jefferson. And then kind of wrapping everything up on Super Bowl Sunday will be the Tonight Show. There's a couple of things that will be occurring in terms of NBC programming from the Orpheum Theater. So during the week, David Faraday will be broadcasting his golf show on the Golf Channel from the Orpheum Theater. And then on Super Bowl Sunday, Jimmy Fallon wraps everything up with the broadcast. Will be broadcasting the Tonight Show to about 4 million viewers from the Orpheum Theater. I'm not going to go through all of these venues and events, but this will just give you a sense of all of the Super Bowl related events that are going to be happening, not only in the city of Phoenix, but throughout the greater Phoenix region. And you can see all of the venues that are going to be utilized as part of the Super Bowl. So this list includes generally the NFL sanctioned events, but in addition to this list, there are going to be literally dozens of private events and functions that will be booked in other venues throughout the region and in downtown Phoenix. This is a visual map of the downtown campus. The boxes in blue are the official venues, the NFL headquarters, the media center, NFL Experience, Symphony Hall, Friday Night Party. To the south side of Jefferson at the arena, the media day, and then the cityscape events. And then what's outlined in the red blocks are really the outdoor fan campus, which is Super Bowl Central, live stages. NBC and the NFL Network will also be broadcasting from Block 23. And so this is really going to be the epicenter of the downtown activities. So a little bit more detail on Super Bowl Central. Will be open for 5 days, beginning on Wednesday the 28th. All of the hours of operation. There will be a nightly fireworks show that coincides with Super Bowl Central each night. And just to walk through some of the key events and dates. So there's a lot of information on this slide, but the big takeaway is the column on the far right. You begin to see some of the activities and how the projected attendance in downtown Phoenix begins to grow, starting on Sunday, January the 18th, is really when some of the load-in begins for NFL Experience and Super Bowl Central. There's also a large convention. The Society of Critical Care Medicine opens that day. There's a rock and roll marathon. We go to the Friday of that week. There's a Suns game, the True Downtown Phoenix Festival. There's a Phoenix Symphony event that night. Then the Saturday, the first weekend, NFL Experience opens, Media Center opens, Gridiron Glory opens. There's another concert at the arena. There's a monster truck jam at Chase Field. And then on Pro Bowl Sunday, there's so you think you can dance tour over at the Comerica Theater in a Suns game. So you begin to see a lot of the not only the Super Bowl events, but some of the normal events and activities that we have in the downtown. Then you go to the following week, you'll see some more events begin to ramp up. The Super Bowl Central opens on Wednesday the 28th. Another concert at the arena, Enrique Iglesias and Pitbull on the 29th. Then we get to the weekend of the Super Bowl Sunday and the Tonight Show. So a lot of the events, a lot of activity. Obviously, a lot of this doesn't occur without a lot of planning. And so the city staff team has been spending a great deal of time coordinating events and activities. We have a steering committee that's comprised of about 14 city departments, working closely with our partners at the NFL, the networks, the host committee, Visit Phoenix. We have groups that are organized, focused on downtown community outreach and communications that Eric's going to talk a little bit more in detail about in just a second. Obviously, advertising, signage, permitting, zoning, our planning and development department is leading those efforts. Traffic and streets will be very important in terms of street closures, where people can drop off. So our street transportation department is working closely on that planning effort. Public transit includes bus, rapid, light rail. So Marie Hyatt is leading a group that's focused on developing a public transit plan. Parking coordination, there's not only the city-owned garages in the downtown, but privately owned garages. So we're working closely with all the private property owners on identifying the inventory of public and private parking garages that would be utilized. Kevin Cobrenner, who heads up our Office of Emergency Management, is working closely with the police and fire department and our regional their regional counterparts on the public safety plan. And then, of course, our public information office and the host committee are working on the marketing and media and the messaging of all of these activities. There's, in addition to some of the operational plans that are being developed, we have tabletop exercises that we're working in conjunction with our public safety folks on the operational side. So we're getting down to the wire, and a lot of work has been put into the plan. So with that, I will turn it over to Eric to talk a little bit more in detail about some of the outreach efforts.
Thank you, John. Members of the subcommittee. Obviously, we know communication is one of the most important things we're doing here to make sure that not only the community, but the valley at large knows what's going on around town. Our primary focus for almost a year now has been trying to reach out to our downtown stakeholders, the people who will probably be the most impacted with all the changes that will be happening. What you're seeing on this screen is a website that's being hosted through the host committee to help provide a lot of that information out to the community. Our major outreach efforts have really begun in earnest in October and November, and we're rolling here into December with a lot of meetings to not only one-on-one groups, but to large group meetings with business owners, property managers, their security groups as well. And we've been meeting with the groups and as well as providing informational handouts. As we've gotten to the point where we have the specific details, we're going to come back around to all those groups and provide them the specific details so they'll know on a block-by-block basis what the impacts will be, how we're maintaining access. What you're seeing here on this screen are a lot of the key talking points that we've been communicating out to those groups. But really, we've got a lot of new downtown residents, making sure that they know they'll still be able to get in and out of their properties, the businesses, how they'll be able to get their deliveries, and how to handle any special event needs that they have, as well as just keeping them in operation. Pedestrian circulation throughout downtown. We're working very closely with public safety, the street transportation department, to make sure that downtown will still be open and people can get in and out, as well as letting them know how to do that and working with them to develop those plans. Staff on both the host committee and Downtown Phoenix Inc. have been crucial in helping maintain those partnerships that we've had. Creating the business rally is coming up here actually on December 8th. The host committee will be having a business rally at the Arizona Center, trying to reach out to the downtown business community, provide them with an overview of how all the events will take place, as well as get out our primary contact information. We're trying to make sure that we have one single point of contact so people don't have to go searching for multiple locations to find out the information they need, but work through the resources we have to maximize the single point of contact and then distribute that information through not only the host committee and Downtown Phoenix Inc.'s resources, but also all of the city's resources that we have. We have been very closely working with not only the business community, but also the downtown neighborhood groups. The ones that are located, such as Roosevelt Action Association, thank you, John. The Roosevelt Row Merchants Association, Evans Churchill Neighborhood. We've been working very closely with them to not only let them know what's going on with Super Bowl planned activities, but also how they can become a part of the event as well and see how we can help bring their information to the community as well. As we get to the finite details that are being developed right now, we're going to come back out, utilize our resources through the Public Information Office, Neighborhood Services Department, as well as all the other city resources to make sure we're reaching out. If we don't get a chance to meet with people on one-on-one, we're at least make sure that they have handouts, have emails, and have website addresses so that they can be a part of the information, as well as pass that information on to everyone else.
Eric, could you talk about your work with neighborhood services? And you've got a slide up here that is, I think, important because we talk a lot about downtown proper, but downtown sits in a context of many residential neighborhoods. And so could you talk a little bit about what you, the city staff, the host committee, and particularly with neighborhood services help in getting out to these people and the steps you're taking.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. We are just beginning, as the specific details have been worked out for which streets will be impacted and when. We are going to be working with the neighborhood service action officers as well as with the police department and their neighborhood representatives to make sure that we reach out to each one of these individual groups, work on the relationships that have been developed already, and make sure that we provide them each with the individual information, offer to come out and meet with any of their neighborhood groups that want us to meet with them. Our focus has been, up until this time, has been really on the areas within 7th Street to 7th Avenue and McDowell down to basically Lincoln. But now we know we need, as we've got the detail and the information, we want to expand that to basically the areas surrounding the greater downtown area. So going over towards the East Lake Village, going up Grand Avenue, making sure we reach out to FQ Story and areas just north of the I-10 freeway. So we are expanding our reach to make sure we work with all those neighborhood groups to get that information out so that while they may not have a specific street that's closed or restricted, but they'll know what's happening a mile down the road from them so that they're able to adequately address their planning efforts. We've reached out to the school districts to make sure that they know what's going to be happening downtown so that if they need to modify any of their schedules, or at least they'll know when there's the roads will be a little bit more busy because of traffic impacts. So we're going to begin reaching out all to the churches and the neighborhoods in the area as well. So we're just beginning to do that outreach, but we're definitely working through the resources that the city has already developed and the neighborhood services department and their partnership that they have with the neighborhoods. Next, media outreach is something that we definitely are assisting with. The host committee is obviously taking the lead point on trying to create the talking points for not only what Arizona is doing, but also helping coordinate efforts with the NFL. But the city is definitely working in partnership with them. I'm sure you've seen the efforts that the city has done on our own, which is creating the countdown 100 things to do in Phoenix to make sure we highlight all the great things that Phoenix has. That countdown is working through. It's provided not only on our website, but it's something that we've been doing with web blasts and providing that information out to everyone. Currently, the staff is working on need-to-know details. So if you're going to drive downtown, if you're coming from North Phoenix, you want to take this route and park on this side of downtown. If you're taking Valley Metro bus or rail, take these, you go to these parking rides, ride these in. These are what the frequency of trains and buses will be. So we're working on all those important facts of information. As we get those defined, here in December, we'll be starting to run out a long list of need to know and providing the resources, not only websites, but through email blasts and the public meeting process to make sure that we get that information out to everyone. And then the NFL has a very comprehensive application, a web app that they'll be able to use for your smartphone, and we're going to make sure we link all of that through that process to make sure people have as much access to that information as possible. The other key things that we're working on is making sure we're working with our other partners, such as the Department of Transportation, and making sure we get information out to them as well so we can utilize those resources for providing information to the public at large through the informational boards along the freeway system as well. Our last slide here is just giving you an idea of some of the it's going to be some of the key dates that we're coming up here into in December and January. Obviously, the prime focus is happening in these 2 months to make sure we have a lot of events. Today, as John and Paul mentioned, we had the unveiling of the countdown clock. But coming up next, the next big date will be December 8th with a business rally for the downtown business community. And then we're going to have a number of open houses for not only the public, but also city staff. We're going to be making presentations to the department leads as well as any departments that want to have information on the Super Bowl activities and events so that we make sure city staff are communicated to just as much as the public. And then as John mentioned, the real events start happening, or the real activity in downtown will start happening on January 19th when the major setup begins, and then beginning on January 23rd, the true Downtown Phoenix events will start happening in partnership with DPI, and the NFL experience opens on January 24th. With that, I believe we've finished our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, wow. That's amazing, what you guys have done, what's going to be happening in downtown. I mean, it's exceptional. So thank you to everybody on our staff, DPI, everyone who's come together on this. It's incredible that you're getting all this done while running a city at the same time. So, you know, we kind of take this for granted, but I am, for one, am very appreciative of what you're doing, and it's going to be very exciting. A couple things. First of all, I'm wondering on the parking and all of this, the transit planning, have you looked at using sites like Park Central Mall for people to park and come down? Maybe you can talk a little about some of that specific planning.
Sure. As part of the parking coordination involves looking at additional park and ride opportunities. So we've identified lots to the north and to the west and to the east that can be utilized. There's also designated lots that have been identified for some of the temporary workers that will be working as part in the downtown to park and potentially take transit in. So those additional park and ride lots have been identified as part of the planning process.
Wonderful. Mr. Chair, you know, this isn't only downtown Phoenix, too. I mean, there's other events going on around the city. A couple weeks ago, up in my district in Moon Valley Park, we had the NFL come out in partnership with the host committee and planted 40 new trees as that, you know, the sustainability effort of the NFL in connection with the Super Bowl. And, you know, there's a lot from a sustainability side that the NFL is focused on, the host committee is focused on, and hopefully we'll have a chance to chat about that in my subcommittee here as we get closer to the Super Bowl. And another thing, too, that I would say is clearly the great effort that's being done by this team did not play a small part in the NCAA recently agreeing to award the 2017 Final Four. So not only is it great to, you know, look good for this event, but it's clearly this team that's been put together, you know, headed by Paul Blue and everyone here. It's paying dividends as we'll have Super Bowl in 15, National Championship football game in 16, and you know, and I'm expecting to see U of A versus ASU in that game. By the way you know things are going, and then of course the
Why
final
is everyone laughing about that?
and then the Final Four in 2017. So fantastic. Oh, and the last thing too, I'd like to mention about near and dear to my heart, Faraday. Being at the Orpheum, clearly the reason that he's going to be in Phoenix is because of the fantastic municipal golf courses we have in the city of Phoenix, you know, Maryvale, Cave Creek, and others. So I just want to make sure that Vice Mayor Waring heard that. So thank you. Very kidding, of course, to my friend, but exciting and can't wait for what's going to roll out here over the next couple of months. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair, Councilman Gates, thank you. But I would, thank you for acknowledging, and you're very kind. It is ultimately staff who is, and I got to tell you, they're working really hard because they're doing their day job, and as you all have expected of us and have reminded us, we have to, the job of the day-to-day job has to get done, and so it's been yeoman's work by city staff, and it's really people who are down in the trenches doing the work every day who are really essential. So the line staff of the city is really who's getting it done for you, and I couldn't be more excited to be a part of their team. But I also don't want to fail to acknowledge that the NFL and the Arizona Super Bowl host committee have really bent over backwards to make downtown Phoenix and Phoenix a happening place. It is really because of their confidence in the mayor and the city council that we are having all of this. And I got to tell you, with the work of the Super Bowl host committee, with David Rousseau, Michael Bidwell, Jay Perry, and their whole entire staff, we could not be successful. A lot of what you see is advice from people who came before us. And so I just want to publicly acknowledge that it's because of their great efforts that together we're gonna show the world how wonderful Phoenix is. We're really excited. I'm sure it doesn't show, but we're very appreciative of the council support and the mayor's support. It's essential for us to feel confident to go forward and do good, and we really thank the subcommittee for its support.
Thank you, Paul. Councilwoman, you know, yeah, thank you. I think you did a great job of making sure that as best as we can, we have to acknowledge all of the partners let's think about our regional partners as well. It's the Phoenix Valley, and the game is actually played in Glendale, and I will tell you the public safety, which I'm sure at some point the Public Safety Subcommittee will hear all about all that's going on there, but the regional effort just on a public safety standpoint with all of the police agencies and the fire agencies and of course the Office of Emergency Management, so people can come out, have a great time, and in a safe environment, which is most important as far as I'm concerned. So there's a lot to be thankful for, a lot of hard work, and this is our second go around. But if you think about the last time we had the Super Bowl, last time we had a Super Bowl, it was a different environment. Downtown Phoenix didn't look like downtown Phoenix, but now, the Valley is now going on its second Super Bowl, several Fiesta Bowls. The Final Four would be a new thing, but we are the only market in America with all four major league sports, a major bowl game, NASCAR, stop on the PGA Tour, and we're getting better with every one of those events, and we're doing it as a region. So it's good stuff. So thank you for your effort. Any other further comments or questions? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, Councilwoman Gallego?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank staff so much for reaching out outside of the sevens to talk to the neighborhoods, because we were getting a lot of questions and people weren't sure what was going to be happening in downtown neighborhoods. Most of the people who live downtown or right just outside of downtown spend a lot of time in downtown, and so it's great that we're going to be letting them to know what to expect. I think written communication is especially valuable because not all folks check our website. And I also am very excited about the economic development potential for the Super Bowl. I think the CEO tour has paid dividends in the past, and I'm hopeful that we'll really show off all that Phoenix has to offer to individuals who are visiting. And then I did have one question, and just the warehouse district, if that's involved at all in any of the Super Bowl events.
Councilwoman, Mr. Chair, I think the question was, will the warehouse district be having or holding any events? John?
Mr. Chairman, Councilman, the Super Bowl host committee has a events team that coordinates all of the officially sanctioned events, as well as some of the non-sanctioned events. So part of what their work has included showing some of the venues that are opportunities in the warehouse district, such as the Bentley Gallery or the Deuce. So they've introduced those venues to some of the people that are out there, the meeting planners that are out there booking events. But at this point in time, we've not heard which events have been booked in which venues. But the venues in the warehouse district have been shown.
And Mr. Chairman, Councilman Gallego, what I would emphasize, while I don't make any commitments about who will go where and do what, I can tell you that a lot of decision-making about these parties and other private events is actually occurring between now and the end of the calendar year. It's actually now is the time when people actually have something to understand what's actually going on, and they're starting. So you saw that list that John represented some national name brands. I don't think we knew those national name brands 30 days ago. And so the flood is now starting to come through, not just in Phoenix, but throughout the whole entire region. So more to come. I don't know what will happen, but I think we have, as staff, greatly encouraged private property opportunities to the host committee, who is sharing them with all of the meeting planners who are coming by them. So we're doing all we can to make sure there's exposure.
Okay. Anything further from my colleagues? Okay. Thank you so much for the update. We'll move on to item 8, call to the public. We have one card. Again, just as a reminder, we began the meeting and end the meeting with the call to the public. Steve Dreisison, 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, my name is Steve Dreisison. I'm a resident, as I think you know, of the FQ Story Historic District in Central Phoenix. I had the opportunity to see some of our citizens participate in public comment regarding the FAA flight path change, and that's why I'm here as well. I wanted to make a statement in general that we are seeing ever so slowly some progress. I appreciate the city, what appears to be full buy-in in this process. We know it's going to be a long and arduous process, and we look forward to next steps. We heard from the FAA within the 30 days that they promised, and it's only been a couple of weeks since we've heard from them. We know things hopefully are in motion to get us to the next step, which is continuing dialogue and on a path to make the changes that we seek. So I want to thank you very much for your help.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. No further call to the public. We have future agenda items. I want to remind our staff, I did have a conversation with our city manager yesterday about adding the FAA issue as a standing item, given an opportunity for us to relay whatever progress may be had and give us a chance to continue to work on this issue. I think the public, I had a chance to meet with several of our stakeholders and neighborhood leaders, and you know, we very much are part of the same team here, including the aviation staff. From what I can tell, we are all advocating for the people of Phoenix, and we're all in the same boat. And it's important that we have this item heard each month so that people understand that and give us a chance to continue to work on it. Any other future agenda items?
Yeah, and I would just follow up on that as well. Again, this has been an issue in my district over the years with the Scottsdale Airport, and we were told deal with it. And so I, for one, am very pleased that we're having this discussion and that all of our colleagues here are taking this very seriously.
No other future agenda items? Okay. Hearing none, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.